Whether it was a direct impact on the personal lives of the people, or something that sprouted from the events of the Great War, World War I greatly affected many, many people throughout the last 100 years. Most of Europe was affected, making America the perfect place for refuge for everyone. The war collapsed the European economy, gave a platform for the Soviet Union and Nazi Germany to rise, incited anti-Semitism, and ultimately drove thousands of people out of Europe. Even though the events of the Great War happened almost 100 years ago, and all the events leading to my family's history were far in the past, from learning our history, we get a better understanding of how and why we live where we live. This is the video of how and why my father's family came to North America, and the reasons that I'm living in Toronto today. Linda, my father's mother, so my great-grandmother on my father's side, was originally from Berlin, Germany. She was one of the few lucky children who got onto the Kindertransport in 1938, allowing her to escape the terrors of Nazi Germany in the Holocaust. She later met her husband, Edward, or my great-grandfather, on my father's side in Scotland years later. Edward Wolfson, my great-grandfather, or my father's family, lived in Scotland for over 3 generations. They were deeply rooted in the lifestyle and culture of Scotland, but due to their financial instabilities and lack of infrastructure caused by the war, they had to leave. Edward was a cobbler and Linda a seamstress, but raising a family of 4, my grandfather, his wife, and the 2 kids on their salary was extremely difficult. In 1951, America presented better and more economically stable lifestyle for the whole family, so they left Scotland and went to the US. As you can see here, America advertised high living standards and better economic opportunity than many other places around the world. Once they landed in Ellis Island, New York, they got processed as refugees, then moved to New Jersey, where they raised their 2 kids, Ron and Jeffrey Wolfson, eventually retiring and moving to Florida. World War I allowed for the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia, with the Soviet Union coming from its wake. The Soviets made the lives of the Russians almost unbearable. The rise of the Soviets greatly impacted the lives of the Krupnik family, causing them later to move to the US. Herschel Krupnik, my father's mother's father's father, came to America in 1921 at the age of 52 with his family. He had 7 children, including my great-grandfather, Hanoch Wolfson. They left their home in Moldova to live in New York for a better lifestyle. To avoid conscription of their eldest son to the Red Army, the rise of the Soviet Union, the emergence of the pogroms in Russia, as well as the rise of anti-Semitism, Herschel's family was forced to leave. For them too, America presented a safe, ethnically diverse environment where they could practice their Judaism in peace. It also presented a more stable and less corrupt political system. The Krupnik family led a hard life. They had barely any money, the Soviet Union was on the rise, causing political unrest, and the pogroms were driving them out of the country. The father, Hanoch Wolfson, was forced to travel back and forth between America and Russia to find work as a mechanic. My great-great-grandmother, or my father's mother's grandmother, Rachel Leah Krupnik, came to America with $3 at the age of 43 in 1923. From Russia, she traveled to Warsaw to seek refuge from the terrible situation they lived in. She worked odd jobs in Poland to support herself and raise enough money for the trip to America, all while her husband, Hanoch, was in America working as a mechanic. They stayed for Warsaw in 2 years, and then made the trip to Belgium to board a ship to the US. The Krupnik family was extremely poor and could no longer support themselves in Russia, so for the same reason as my great-grandfather, they left. My grandparents later met in New York. Gloria was born in 1943 in New York, and my grandfather, Ron, in the same year, but in Scotland. His family moved to America in 1951. Gloria and Ron met at a party in October of 1968, got married, and lived in New York until 1969, when they moved to New Jersey. They had their first child, my aunt, in 1970, and my dad in 1973. They lived in New Jersey for 4 years, then moved to Montreal for a better job opportunity as a data management agent for Ron. His firm later offered him a raise if he went to the Vancouver branch, so they picked up and left. It was fairly easy for my grandmother, Gloria, to find work, as she was a university professor in education. Although my dad was born in New Jersey, he spent 40 years of his life in Vancouver. My parents met at a Chabad lecture in Vancouver and decided to live there for the majority of our lives. On September 11, 2003, I was born at Vancouver General Hospital. I, as well as all my siblings, were born in Vancouver and moved to Toronto in the summer of 2017. We moved to Toronto for a better Jewish life, which Vancouver could not provide. The Jewish community was lacking in many areas in Vancouver. The schools were small, the Jews were mostly secular, making it hard to find a religious friend group, and the school was not in line with the philosophy of my family. We moved specifically to Toronto because of the huge Jewish community. The English-speaking factor has a school more in line with my family's beliefs and offers an all-around better Jewish life. Once in Toronto, I started grade 9 at Or Chaim, and my brothers went to Netivot, bringing me here today.